celebration of life of John William O'Neill. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Bradley, and we are here to honor, to remember, and to celebrate John's life. And before we start, I'd like to recognize the West Point graduates that we have here. Could you just raise your hand, perhaps? And thank you. Just wanted to recognize you and also to say that I am honored to officiate this service as one who served in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam era, and hopefully will not offend any of the Army guys by doing this. But I was commissioned as an Army chaplain later on in the Guard, and so to say that we are here to celebrate John's life and what a life he led. We're here to seek comfort. We're here to seek peace from one another. And we're here to seek comfort and peace from God. We remember Lieutenant Colonel John O'Neill as a loving husband to Terry for 37 years. He was a loving father. He was a grandfather. He was a brother. He was a family member. And he was a friend. His journey in life began in Chattanooga, Tennessee, growing up in the Lookout Mountain area. John was an excellent student, athlete, learned early on the importance of having an optimistic attitude. John also knew the meaning of hard work and endurance, and the meaning of duty, honor, and country, which of course led to his appointment to West Point, where he earned a BS in engineering and later on would earn a master's in English from the University of Pennsylvania. John would go on to complete his Army career of 20 years of service to his country with tours across the globe, 2 tours in Vietnam, being wounded and awarded the Purple Heart, 2 Bronze Stars, the Combat Infantryman's Badge, Air Medal, and Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Cross. John would, of course, return to West Point as an instructor for a few years, and he would end his military career at the Pentagon, retiring in 1982. And John was just as successful in civilian life, working in the private sector. So John was a multi-talented man. He was intelligent, creative. He understood about priorities of family and duty to country. And he enjoyed life to the fullest with priorities such as James Bond. Who doesn't like a James Bond movie or something having to do with intelligence or maybe lack of intelligence, I'm not sure. And who can forget Casey and the Sunshine Band?
Amen.
I was more Motown back in those days, but probably John was singing and dancing to Sister Sledge, right?
Yes.
Well, We Are Family, Sister Sledge. Enjoyed what's do you like better, cigar or pipe? Pipe. Okay, so enjoyed the pipe, sipping on the Beefeater Gibson, and of course, if you have those, you have to have that onion in it. So the pickled onion. John obviously enjoyed his life with family and friends, whether dining with the Gourmet Dinner Club, sharing a good story, or probably sharing many stories. And of course, the Colonel would be commanding the grill. Who used the word commanding the grill in the obituary?
Rebecca.
Magnificent. Commanding the grill to ensure the steaks were of perfection. And medium rare, not medium, not rare, not well done, but by God, medium rare. Isn't it hard to find a steak cooked well out in some restaurants? So you have to do it yourself. What I so enjoyed being with John is he told some stories as he shared things with his family, as he had a good pipe or cigar, and as he enjoyed his life, as he certainly earned it. I find it very endearing about his names Rosie and Rosebud. And And I guess if you're Rosebud at West Point, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or, of course, upperclassmen about what they do anyhow. But yeah, you can't hide rosy cheeks. You just can't. What is significant throughout his life is that he loved his family. He loved his friends. He loved his country, and he loved his troops. And he was loved deeply and completely. When we lose a loved one, like John, we grieve deeply and we grieve painfully. Yet we take comfort and we give thanks for John and all the memories that he created for you, his family, for his friends, his community. You will always, always have John in your hearts. So there is a sense of relief and comfort that John is at peace, and he dwells in the loving arms of God and has gone on to that sacred place that awaits us when it is our time. We're thankful to God knowing that we're not alone in our struggles. We're not alone in our pain. We're not alone in our grief. And we know that John will always live on in the minds and in the hearts of those who love him. So we are here to celebrate his life. We must remember his life is not measured nor defined by how he died, but what is significant is how he lived his life. Our hope is that we will reflect the privilege and the joy and the celebration that life can bring. You know, I never learned in school that life is both horrible and beautiful. And we celebrate the wonderful times together, and we endure the horrible times. So it's both. And at times like this, we celebrate a wonderful life that John led. And we celebrate together as family, as community, as people who knew him and loved him. John's death may signify an end to his life with us, but his spirit, his love, his legacy, his service to country, to God, to state, community, in essence, all that he was and all that he stood for in life will never die, as love is eternal. Our hope today and tomorrow is that we will find life worth living and enriching, and that we will find meaning and purpose to our lives. Our special prayer is that may God give us all courage, and how we need courage these days. How we need courage these days. Courage to face the unknown with hope and trust. The scripture tells us to be strong, be of good courage, be not afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you. John, may you know how much you are loved. May you know how much you will be missed by all who knew you. And may it be said, well done, and be thou at peace. Well done, John. Well done. And for you and all Vietnam veterans, welcome home. Welcome home.
I wish that we could live forever, melt into the sun. Time's gonna change you when it gets you on the run. It's a song of run. There will be a night. There will be a light. There will be hope. There will be a light.
not going to be able to see me behind this, so I was debating side or front. As for the people that don't know who I am, my name is Heather Cole, and I am John's stepdaughter, and also known as Rabbit, and that's what John nicknamed me because I love track. But, sorry. I hope I can get through this. When my mom and John got engaged, I was in 8th grade, or going into 8th grade, and I was living in Chattanooga, and had lived there all my life, and he was living in Northern Virginia. And so she said, you know, I'm getting married, and we're gonna move to Northern Virginia. And I said, well, there's only one of him and 2 of us, you know, so I wasn't real happy about moving. And so needless to say, I felt like my world was being turned completely upside down. But it was so worth it. And John was just the most wonderful stepfather, and just so loving and kind, and I just was always so proud, and I always wanted to make him proud. And I've really got to up my game now that I know he's looking down on me too, to keep that up. But one thing I just want to share how funny John was, and just always made us laugh, and he loved to embarrass us, I hate to say, and yank our chain, and just really enjoyed life. But when I was probably in about, same thing, 8th grade, we had some neighbors down the street, and they were some young boys out playing football in the street, and I'd say they were 16, 17, and I thought, of course, they were amazing, and would be embarrassed any little thing that he would do, and of course he knew this. And so they're out playing football, and we're driving up, and I'm in the back seat, and Mom's sitting in the front, and John's driving. And he had electric windows and enjoyed using those at times. And so they step aside, and they're waiting for us to proceed to continue. And he just stops the car and only rolls my window down. And then I'm sitting there going, go, John, go, you know. And he decides, nope, I'm not going to do it. And so they're looking at us like, do you have something to say? What is it? And so I kept saying, John, go. And finally he screams, Heather Connor loves you, you know, and takes off. So anyway, that's just kind of how John was. And he kept things very exciting. And also again, when I say mentor, he was really our rock for all of us. A lot of times when it came to whether a new job interview, a promotion, how to ask, just any little thing that we needed mentoring on. He was just so wonderful about doing that, and always so gracious with his time, and just love. So thank y'all for being here.
I'm Tracy Summer. I'm Terry O'Neill's daughter, Heather's sister, and I was blessed to have John as my stepfather for 37 years, as well as a father-in-law to my husband, Mike, and grandfather to my children, Connor and Caroline. And I first met John in 1984. I was a freshman at the University of Tennessee, and I had become good friends with his daughter, Rebecca. And Rebecca and I were trying to make some plans for spring break, and we didn't have any place to go. And she said, you know, my dad lives in the Washington, D.C. area. We could go up and stay with him for the week. And I'd never been to Washington, D.C., so I thought that sounded like a lot of fun. So we made our plans, and we took the Greyhound bus from Knoxville to Washington, D.C., and John picked us up at the bus station. And while we were there that week, he took some time off of work and took us around and showed us all of the sights, the monuments, the Kennedy Center, and he took us out to dinner. And he had even gone to the trouble of getting in touch with some good friends to see if their son and maybe one of his friends would go on a date with Rebecca and myself. So Rebecca and I got ready one evening, and the guys said that they had something to do early in the evening, but that they would hopefully be by around 8 o'clock. So we were ready, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited. And I think John finally thought that they weren't going to show up, and he came into the living room, and he had changed, and he had a suit on. And he said, "I'm going to take you dancing." And so about that time, the doorbell rang, and it was the guys, and John was saved by the bell, and he didn't have to take us dancing. But we did go out with them and had a great time. And when I got back home, and later I told my mom, I said, "Mr. O'Neill was so nice, and he was so gracious and such a great host." And I just have always remembered that he was going to take us dancing that night so that we weren't disappointed and didn't have any place to go after getting all dressed up and all. And then a couple of months later, Rebecca said, "My dad is going to be coming to Van's high school graduation, and we should set him up with your mom," because her parents were divorced, as were mine. And so I mentioned that to my mom, and she said, "Oh, I don't know, someone from out of town and a blind date and all." And I said, "Well, we can't hurt Rebecca's feelings, Mom, And so she agreed and said, okay, that she would go. So he called her up, and they made the arrangements, and they went out on the date and had a lovely night. And then he asked her out for the following night as well. So they hit it off, and when John got back to Northern Virginia, they started a long-distance relationship and dated for a year, and then, as Heather said, got married, and then there were 7 children. And there are not a whole lot of men, I don't think, who'd be willing to take that on. We didn't all live there at the same time, but I think half of us have lived with them at one time or another. And John always made us feel so welcome when we were there, and he would just take that extra step to ensure that we had a special visit, whether it be tickets to Kenny Loggins at the Meriwether Post Pavilion, or a little extra money in our pockets when we were going out to the bars in Georgetown, or always a stocked pantry full of delights and all. And so it was just always a pleasure to be visiting, and even up until right before he went to the hospital, when I would be on the phone with him, he would always say, "Well, come and see us, honey, we love you." So I will always remember John as being such a kind and gracious, generous, thoughtful, loving, and intelligent man. He could recite poetry like no other, and one of the quotes that I remember him saying frequently was, "Work like you don't need the money, love like you've never been hurt, dance like nobody's watching, sing like nobody's listening, and live like it's heaven on earth." John, thank you for the memories, and I hope you're dancing in heaven.
Hi, I'm John W. O'Neill II. At least he never called me Junior, but anyway, again, I met Terry about 37 years ago, and Rebecca and Tracy, got them together. And I remember my dad talking after they went on one of their first dates, where Terry took him hiking on Signal Mountain, and he literally fell down the mountain. And, he was dressed up and, got dirty, muddy. And I remember him, I was talking, "How'd your day go?" He goes, "Well, that's the last time I'm going out with Terry Connor." So anyway, one time he called me. He and I lived apart a lot. And he called me and was telling me, I really like being single. I enjoy, the bachelor life. About a week later, he calls me and says, "I'm getting married to Terry Connor." And I go, "What happened to enjoying the single life?" So anyway, we went over to her house on Signal Mountain. I think it was Thanksgiving. And anyway, we got along great with Chris, Tracy and Heather. And then, you know, I guess my dad wanted to, you know, put the O'Neills versus the Connors together, you know, in race. So anyway, and that's how Heather got the name Rabbit, because she was so fast. But, you know, it was neck and neck, and, you know, my dad kept telling me, well, I'm faster than anybody here. Well, I think it was he and Heather in the you know, last leg, and of course, Dad pulls his hamstring. I often think that he did it on purpose, but he would never, you know, confirm nor deny that. So, but he always thought of Chris, Heather, Connor, Mike, Carper, everyone here as their kids. He never referred to you as his stepkids, and I don't, you know, refer to you as my stepbrothers and sisters. So, anyways, we've been lucky to be part of one another's life. You know, I'm gonna miss my dad, but again, his attitude. He's told me, you know, 100 times. He goes, you know, if I died today, I lived the luckiest life of any man that could be imagined. I've, you know, had a more fortunate life than I ever have. So, you know, we always had a positive attitude, and, you know, I always remember that from him. He took us great places to live, West Point, Fort Leavenworth, Fort Benning, and, you know, Washington, D.C. So I'm honored to be named after him, and I'm going to miss him. I love him very much, and I'm glad a lot of his old classmates came here from West Point. I mean, they graduated in 1962, and, you know, Douglas MacArthur gave the speech, Farewell to the Corps. John F. Kennedy officiated their graduation. So he rubbed elbows with a lot of, you know, famous people, you know, and a lot of the fine people that I grew up with. It was truly an honor and a reflection of him as a person. So anyway, that's all I have as far as honoring my dad. I've got a lot of good memories, and I'm going to miss him very much.
Hi, I'm Dan O'Neill. I'm the middle child of John, just like he was a middle child. I'm going to read a poem, A Successful Man. That man is a success who has lived well, laughed often, and loved much, who has gained the respect of intelligent men and the love of children, who has filled his niche and accomplished his task, who leaves the world better than he found it, who has never lacked appreciation of earth's beauty or failed to express it, who looked for the best in others and gave the best he had. Before I begin, Dad did love everyone. He loved Terry. He showed us just, you know, you were the love of his life. But I want to thank Tracy, Heather, who worked, Mike Carper, and obviously Chris, who and his family who came here, and everyone that was here directly to support during his passing and while he was living here. The Dad was got a bachelor's of engineering at West Point. Like most bachelors, engineers, he would surround himself with wonderful tools. Those tools were used by Terry only. My dad knew how to use 3 tools. He knew how to man the blender, command the grill, and commandeer the TV remote. He was not very gifted sometimes in technology. I remember in 1997, he was calling me. He had a laptop, and he was wanting to hook it up to the phone, to connect. And I kept on saying, well, Dad, you should have a modem in there. And we talked for 5 minutes. I said, well, describe every part you have there. And as he read, I got the PC, I got this line cord, I got this thing, it's spelled M-O-D-E-M. And it was just funny that he just did not catch that. Dad had a good sense, sometimes had a bad sense of timing. One time he did try to fix something, and that was called a toilet. Late night, and he ended up cracking it in half on his way to Redstone Arsenal. We only had one toilet in the house. It was fixed the next day. One time, he had to go, he had an Army PE assignment, I believe it was in Redstone Arsenal. And he was ready for it. It was early Saturday morning, and he just forgot in his prep work to check to see if his combat boots were ready. Well, the last time he had combat boots that he had used them as a prop as when he was dressed as Julius Caesar, and he had painted them gold. He showed up to the PE thing dressed in gold boots and was known as Golden Boy for quite a few months. And another one of my fondest memories was when Rebecca and Tracy were graduating. We were at Memorial Auditorium in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we were sitting up in the rafters, and my grandmother, Bomba, Hazel O'Neill, was there with my dad, and I was sitting with him. And all of a sudden, in the stairwell, we kept on hearing this thump, thump, thump. And it just kept on crescendoing, and it was like 20 minutes. Some large, huge man is walking up these stairs like a wrestler or something. We turn around, it's all quiet. We turn around, and a little 5-year-old boy emerges. We had the biggest giggles that we could do. I mean, I remember he giggled for the last 10 minutes, and that was something, when we grew up, the biggest fear was giggling during a serious moment, and we didn't fare well with that. Music was a fond memory of my dad. He had a Grundig German radio that he brought back from Germany. Then he had the Sansui Tower of Power that we all used all the time. One time when he was staying with me while he was working up in Virginia, I started doing a Chromecast to the TV, and for just listening to the music from that I heard and the music from the 50s. He always would sing, My Friends Call Me Speedo, but my real name, Mr. Earl. He would always sing that song. But for 6 hours that night, he and I just had a moment where we listened to each other's music, and we didn't go to bed till 2 in the morning. And that was just something that was a special moment we had recently. Some of the traits that we had, most of us got a smirk, the sense of laughter, and all of the O'Neill kids had its cowlick. There was no doubt that we were his kids. In January, when he was in the hospital, Dad was always talking about when my grandmother, I got a videotape recorder, I videotaped her, and I got her to admit that was her favorite, like she told everybody else, and I had proof. But Dad wanted to have that memory saved on videotape, and he kept on saying, hey, we need to do this, we need to do this. I wanted to tell people what I thought. And what I would say is, he told that story every day of his life.
Hello, my name's Matthew O'Neill. I'm John's youngest son, and I wanted to go last so my brothers didn't say anything bad about me so I could come back. And a side note, everyone in this room knows Bomba. I was Bomba's favorite. So that's just straight to the point. A couple of things first. A couple of people couldn't be here. John's brother, Mike, graduated from West Point as well. He was his older brother. He couldn't make it. They had some issues going on. And his sister, Susie. He loved his sister. We loved my Aunt Susie. We loved all of them. And so we had family reunions. So they couldn't make it. And my sister couldn't make it. She wanted to be here. And I tried to get her to come here, but she goes, look, Matt. She texted me. You just heard the text. She's like, ain't no way I'm coming because I can't hold it together. And she called me last night. Been calling me every morning at 2 a.m. So it's a little tough for her. And she goes, I'd be a wreck. So they couldn't make it, and then we have some nieces and nephews, or some nephews that couldn't make it as well, Eric and Chris, and then Annie and Mike. So they aren't here. But so what I want to do is give something, Dad as a boy. Bomba used to tell us little stories about Dad as a boy. The best one I ever heard was Dad was walking up the mountain. So they weren't rich at all. And my mom, who not the biggest fan of my dad, she goes, they were pretty rough off. But my grandmother said, John was walking up that mountain and these two boys were coming to bully him. And John stuck out that pocket knife and turned around, looked at him and goes, I'm going to cut your guts out if you come over closer to me. So that was one thing. So yeah, she always told us that story, and he was a little boy. And then the other story Dad told us was funny. Dad liked movies. Even as a kid, he loved movies. He was riding a bus, trolley. It's hot. Back in those days, AC wasn't a thing. Evidently, it was really hot, and Dad said he was sitting in the back of the bus, or the front of the bus. There's a guy, these guys were riding, and this guy's like, I'm not feeling good, and reaches out the window and acts out the window, and in the back of the bus, he said he heard this guy, ah! Where the windows were all down, so it went through the. So Dad always brought that up. It was always a funny thing, and always stories he brought up. And with us, he always brought us little stories together. I mean, there's so many, he's like, come here, kid. You're like, oh, God, Dad's going to have a story time. And so, one time, I always laugh at this one, is he brought us together talking about guns. He's showing us, like, kids, if they come in here, you just shoot them. Don't, showing us how to shoot the gun. It's dark outside. All the TVs we're intense. And about that time, my mom walks in the door. He's like, ah! And almost shoots the gun off. So, we were all like, oh, my God, jump, because we were already scared to death because Dad had us going. So it was always funny to those things. But so things people don't know, Dad was in Vietnam. He has a lot of pictures. Van's got a lot of pictures of him with monkeys and everything. So he loved it. He'd smoking cigars. But what people didn't know, he was shot off on a gunship, and he almost lost his life. That was the last time in Vietnam. He got hit by a grenade launcher, rocket launcher, and he told us the story. He got knocked up. He was lucky to get in water. He thought he was going to lose some of his troops, but they got back. But he had his eardrums blown out, and that was it. He was done. So. But he had two tours before that, I believe. But he was lucky to be here, and he was glad about that. He said he got blown up as the loudest hit he had ever heard, and he went like 10 feet in the air. So he always pointed to that as being glad to be alive. So, he graduated from West Point like his brother, but he also taught at West Point, which was really great. So, there was a whole time before I was born, but really what matters is when I was born. So, he lived in West Point, New York, and it was the best time because all the cadets would come over. They had parties like every weekend. The cadets loved that. I mean, I remember I had one, David Cronin named his son after me. When we did the graduation, we all got hats of everybody's Glenn. Everybody signed their hats and gave them to us as kids because they admired Dad that much as an English teacher and everything else. And side note, when I was doing my master's in undergrad, I thought I was writing good papers until Dad critiqued my papers. And, I didn't know how many people could put red lines through Word like Dad did, but he did. The first one, I was like, yeah, this is a good paper. And I got it, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not real smart here. But I just learned to just say, accept all. I didn't even go back and through and argue it. I just accept all. But so that was great times. I mean, West Point was an amazing time. Used to, have get-togethers, brothers and sisters, just an amazing time. Then we moved to Leavenworth, and it's weird in the Army. Well, you guys know, because all the kids have been in it pretty much, that you go with a pod of people when you move. So we moved with most of the pod of people, but we're going to Leavenworth, Kansas, and there's always this famous drive. It was a long drive. We're in a big old Buick, 4 kids and mom, driving across country from West Point to Kansas, and I remember John sitting in the back seat going, I'm not feeling good, Dad. I think I got car sick. I'm getting car sick. His dad, of course, like, there's no such thing as car sickness, son. You don't keep people don't get car sick. And John's like, oh, I'm not feeling good. And about that time, Rebecca gets sick and throws up. Well, my mom turns around and looks like, and throws up. Well, I always had this habit. Back then, you didn't have to have seatbelts. I always rode over my dad's shoulder, right in the middle. And about that time I look, and I'm like, all over Dad's back while he's driving. And Dad had this yell that, he's like, he could be serious, but when he's like, ah! So, yeah, it's all over his back. And it's one of those famous moments in the O'Neill lore. So it's pretty awesome when you think about it because we remember it all this time. But we moved to Kansas, and I can't think of, going to a swimming pool without the smell of Leavenworth, Kansas, because we did swim and everything. So it was a great time. Then we moved to Huntsville, back to Chattanooga, and it was a good time to be with family. He went to see his family, but it changed us because we'd go to Redstone Arsenal, and we saw so much stuff. We'd go swimming. So being in the Army for Dad, it was like so much. As a kid, we got to go to the officer club, swimming, so it was a great time. I'm getting older, so I gotta get my glasses on here. Let's see. So then he moves to DC. He moves to DC. First time he goes up, my Aunt Susie's got this big old Ford LTD. We go up there, and he's got this penthouse apartment. I mean, Christmas tree playing Bing Crosby and Johnny Mathis, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. Well, that apartment was a scene for many crimes. The first one is, Dad had this habit of playing poker. He loved to play poker, but for us, there's some pretty serious penalties if you lost. You had to clean the kitchen after 8 when you got 4 kids and a father, doing dishes isn't fun. Well, unfortunately for some people, the skill of the younger brother, which people claim I cheated, but most notably John O'Neill, who would cook dinner most of the time and work, he would lose, and he had to clean. Many years later, they all claimed I cheated, which was a total lie. But I did finally tell Dad, I go, I didn't want to clean that kitchen, Dad. They were all blaming. Dad's like, he doesn't cheat. But, a couple aces back in the back pocket every hand when you're down to your last. There's a reason why I was down to my last chips, because I didn't want to lose. And every time I lost, I was like, I'm not losing this next hand. So I just pulled those hands back. And I was a very gracious winner, too, with John. He would look at me like, Daddy's cheating, Daddy's cheating. I'm like, no, not Dad. And Dad turns back and be like, and John would come and try to beat me up. So it was one of the things. But another thing is the elevator scenes. Oh, my God. It's the worst. So the O'Neills, Van mentioned it. We couldn't get together in a place in a closing container or a church. We'd look at each other, and one would look and then smirk, and we'd just start laughing, especially these people that we'd seen swimming. We'd give them nicknames like Mark Spitz and all this stuff. And Dad would go, oh, God. Someone's getting on the elevator, and we're like, Dad threatened us. He's like, oh, you're going to be grounded if you do it again, if you laugh again on that elevator. Well, Van starts it up because he's like, can't stop that smirk. But I remember one time I just got off the elevator. I was like, 10th floor. I'm like, I can't do it. I got off the elevator, waited a few minutes, and I went downstairs a couple floors and called the elevator, opened it, and there they are. They're right in the elevator, like, took forever. I'm like, oh. But Dad used to always hate that when we did that. And then next, Dad screwed up. He was like, hey, we're going to the Connors for Christmas. And we go up there, and we have this race, and they call Heather Rabbit. So let's be honest about the race. I let Heather beat me, okay? I'm just saying that here. But Dad pulled up lane for Terry because he's like, oh. I'm like, oh, come on, Dad. At least, give it a shot. But no, he really enjoyed that time. And you could tell it was different when we went up there. Terry had this great spread, and Dad was just so happy. So when it comes to it, the Connor kids, I want to tell you, Dad never had one bad thing I've ever heard him say about any. Heather, Tracy, Chris, Carper, Mike, never. I've never heard him say anything but great things. He loved you guys. Dang it. No, but he did. He cared about you guys so much. And so every time he talked about your kids like they were his own grandkids, and they were, So John was right. He I never had him say a bad thing about you guys. Just always grateful on how awesome you were. Terry, when I work, people talk, oh, my wife. I can honestly say, Dad never, ever spoke a bad word about you. We sat there, never said, had regrets, never. So he was in heaven when he was with you. He loved you like no other. And I tell people, I tried to talk him from going, moving to South Carolina. I tried, because I like to have him home, have him close to me. But you knew you wanted to be with the chicks. And he was going to do what you wanted to do. And he loved you because you were the love of his life. And he did care about you greatly. To my brothers and sisters, you know, my sister's not here. She actually helped do a lot of things here. She did help with the obituary, did most of it many times, and got a lot of flowers. And like I said, there were some issues, but she wanted to be here. She just couldn't. Sometimes you know, somebody's very close. She was his only daughter, and they had a special relationship. And she just said, you know, she told me, you know, even today, she says, do not call me. Just want to know, you know, good luck. I just don't want to talk to you right now because she'd be upset. To my brothers, you know, Dad was great to have, but he also expected a lot of us. And, you know, for my brothers and sisters, I'll tell you honestly, Van, you got me a meter, a stupid little meter, but you ain't got me a meter, and it helped save my life. Rebecca drove 10 hours in the middle of the night to take me to the hospital. And John helped me in another situation. You know, I tell people, if I had to go to a fight with anybody, I'd take my brothers and my sister, because there ain't no beating us if it has, or somebody's going to be leaving without ears and without fingers. So, and then it comes down to Dad. Dad's failure in life is probably because he worked. He liked to work. He loved to work. And I say that's a failure in life because he thought he could work until probably the day he died. He wanted to work. He loved to work. But he taught in us integrity. I can sit here and tell you I will never work as hard as I saw my dad work, ever. I watched him. I lived with Terry and Dad for a little bit. And he worked and he loved it. I did. But you know what? With that though, it was a chance for me to connect with Dad, which was awesome. And to Heather, you know, I got to connect with Heather, you know. We had parties, great parties. And Dad wanted us to have parties, which was even better, you know. But he worked and he taught us integrity. Because I don't remember people would always say, I mean, he'd go, so-and-so tried to say they did this. So I know Van, John, Rebecca, we've always just worked to be hard. We try not to step over people. Hard work will pay off, and it does. We're all successful. All kids are successful. And so we take that pride, and I laugh. Like, I talk about those little meetings with your kids. My boys, poor kids, one of them, John Ratliff O'Neill, is named after John, and our dad and John as well. And then my other son, Ben Van Zandt O'Neill. I chose those names because it's people I cared about the most. I also, you know, my youngest, when I was first born, Terry, I tell you, it's two of the best days of my life were my boy was born. But the special day was when Jack was born and y'all took me out. And I just sat there going, I'm a father, with my dad, having a beer. And it was the greatest thing ever. And thank you all for being here. I mean, it's tough, but remember those good times. And there's so many stories I probably could get to, but we won't do it. But thank you, everyone. We love you.
I can't stand behind them. Let me first put there, I'm Jay Land, by the way. I'm Uncle John's nephew. My wife asked me, what do you want to say? And I'm like, I have no idea. Anybody that knows me, I'm never lost for words. But I do have a few thoughts. One, Van's a liar. I was the favorite grandchild. And if Bomba was on tape saying that Van was the favorite, it's because he coerced her. I cannot tell you how many hours that Matthew and I spent on our hands and knees at Bomba's house picking lint out of the carpet. Van never did that. So I knew that Van was not the favorite. And you know it too, you're part of it. You know, I've always had this uncanny fandom for Casey and the Sunshine Band. And And I had never understood why I liked Casey and the Sunshine Band. Well, when I read the first draft of the obituary when Rebecca sent it to me, Uncle John's favorite band, I'm like, oh, now I get it. You know, okay, and now it makes sense. So things are starting to add up. You know, Uncle John for me was a larger than life influence. You know, I told Uncle John I was thinking about joining the Army. He's like, hey, you need to do it. It changed me. It made me who and what I am today. And I'm like, that's pretty good. So I joined the Army. I wanted to get some college money, the 5-2 or the GI Bill. But then they're like, we're going to give you, you need to think about being an officer. So I called Uncle John, hey, they say I should be an officer. What do you think about West Point? He's like, yeah, there are other options out there. Other options. Because I think what he had in mind, he saw me going to West Point and ended up marching like 4 years worth of the merits in the quad, or whatever it is you guys call it. So he's like, well, why don't you go to like a regular school, you know, where you're not marching around the building all night for all the stuff that I know you're going to do. You know, Uncle John was pretty smart. He could see in the future. But it's funny, a few years later, at my promotion, I was serving in DC, and Uncle John and Aunt Terry came up to the ceremony, and man, I was excited. I'm getting promoted to major. It's a field grade officer, big step. My Uncle John's there, my hero. I'm getting promoted by our 3-star general, you know, another hero of mine. The problem was General Hack had went to VMI, the Virginia Military Institute, and he wasn't a huge fan of West Point. Well, he found, I slipped up and told him that Uncle John was a West Point grad. So General Hack gets up and starts talking, and he's like, we're privileged to have Lieutenant Colonel retired O'Neill here with us today. Colonel, I understand you're a graduate of West Point. Uncle John's like, well, yes, sir, yes, I am. He goes, you know, that's really just the VMI of the North, right? The look, the blood drained from his face, the smirk. And I saw Terry quietly reach over and just place it. And I'm thinking, I'm kind of backing away. I'm like, I was going to get promoted. But now Uncle John's getting ready to bum rush General Hack, beat him senseless, and they're going to throw me out of the army. Thank you, Terry, for restraining me. Because you didn't mess with West Point. You just didn't. But the 6 degrees of separation, my biggest mentor, one of my biggest mentors in the Army was an Army Colonel, West Point class of 76, who was there with me in DC. Guess who his English lit teacher was in 1972? John O'Neill. So, you know, when you think about the thousands of troops that Uncle John influenced, when you think of the chain of events and everything, what are the odds of my Uncle John, who taught this colonel that I now serve with as my mentor, all being in the same place at the same time? Serendipity, I guess that's the right word. I'm not a West Pointer, but I'm sure that's the right word. You know, it all comes down to what did he leave? Because that's really the mark of a man. It's really the mark of a leader. What did he leave behind? You know, anytime I'm anywhere around me and my cousins, again, man, I'm a favorite. The first thing you see coming from my cousins is kindness, empathy, integrity. All things that John O'Neill lived and represented that he's passed down to the kids. The mark of a man, the mark of a leader, is not all the great things he did. Combat tours in Vietnam. Our Vietnam vets paid a very horrible price in thankful they're starting to fix that. Army Ranger, paratrooper, those are all great things, but at the end of the day, what really matters, I think, is what you stood for and what you've left behind. And when you look at the family that John O'Neill has left behind, that is really the true mark of the leader that John O'Neill was. And I wouldn't be where I got without John O'Neill. And I'm very thankful to have called him uncle. I'm very thankful to be part of the O'Neill family. And I'm very, very grateful and thankful that I had such a man that was able to set such an example for me, to lead me through lessons in life that will hopefully leave behind as much of a legacy as John O'Neill. So we love you, Aunt Terry. God bless you.
You know, it's hard for a chaplain to transition from parties and drinking beer to the 23rd Psalm, but I'm going to do it. Great memories, and I agree, it's the legacy that you leave behind, about the integrity. I would rather have, we should just have some beers, you know, at this moment. Amen. Okay. Also want to recognize, before we continue, also all veterans that are here today. I spent time also in Iraq and several tours in Afghanistan, and we got some great young troops who served during that time, and maybe we have Korean veterans as well, but just to recognize all veterans. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever. I will share with you one of my favorite prayers by Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton was a very authentic person. His prayer was, "My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone." Amen. Some of the New Testament. "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light. I am resurrection, and I am life, says the Lord. All who have faith in me shall have life, even though they die. And all who have life and have committed themselves to me in faith shall not die forever. As for me, I know that my Redeemer lives, and that at the last will stand upon the earth. After my waking, the Lord will raise me up, and I shall see God. I myself shall see, my eyes behold the Eternal, who is my friend and not a stranger." Let us pray. God of all creation, hear us when we feel the depths of despair, when there seems no reason to go on, when the agony of loneliness seems overwhelming, and when there seems no firm foundation. Hear us, O Lord. For in being heard there is hope. In sharing there is love. In giving there is thanks. In tears there is comfort. And in touching there is warmth. O God, our hearts are aching. Love us as we are, filled with grief and loss and pain. In this most difficult time, lend us your support and care. Make a special place in your loving care of John, and help us to trust in you and your care of him, so that someday we too may attain some measure of peace. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Now we'll have our honors by the American Legion. Please come forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Glenn Hero, and I'm the commander of the Pawleys Island American Legion, a post which John was a member of. And I remember one thing that stands out. One of the programs of the American Legion is Voice Tape, where we send young high school boys off to a camp where they learn about Americanism and patriotism and how the government works. And in our last meeting in September, when John came, and we had the boys that we had already sent for 2021 there, and they all sat at the same table with John. And I learned that John went to Boys State in 1956. And he had a wonderful time talking to them, exchanging ideas, what it was like in 1956 and what it was like in 2021. And with that, I'd like to just say a few things. This moment is sacred with the almost visible presence of the one who has gone before. We come to honor the memory of those who offered life and service for God and country, one who is now enrolled in the great army whose footfalls cause no sound. But our memory of their souls goes marching on. Proudly we remember their service in time of war. Because of them, our lives are free. Because of them, our nation lives. Because of them, the world is blessed. May the ceremonies of today deepen our reverence for our honored member and friend John. Legionnaires and friends, let us here pledge ourselves to united service, to consecrate and sanctify our comradeship by devotion to mutual helpfulness and the protection of those left behind. We realize how futile mere words are to express the deep and abiding sympathy for your loss. May you feel our friend John is at rest and in endless peace. Thank you. All of those that are able, please stand for the pledge.
you so much, friends, for coming to support Miss O'Neill and the family. They'll remain here in the chapel for just a few more minutes if you'd like to speak to them before you leave. Also, the family will be gathering at the home of the Coles, which is at 136 Spreading Oak Drive in Pawleys Island. It's in the Litchfield Plantation. You're more than welcome to join the family there to continue the celebration of Lieutenant Colonel O'Neill. Thank you. Oh, sure. Oh, I was reminded that it's a gated community. So and when you get to the gate, be sure that you're there to be going to the Coles house for Mr. O'Neill's reception. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I should have had you make that announcement.
And let them know. Yeah. Please rise.